everyone, Draco Magnius here for another episode of Let's Play Omen Exitio Plague. In the last episode, we discovered that Makwawa was throwing his diseased villagers down a well. The Germans attacked at roughly the same time where Captain Smith was confronting Makwawa, and we bumped into Meyer, who demanded that we give him some intel on the disease, threatening to kill us if we didn't. So we shot the bitch and ran. And now we're out on the ocean heading back to Zimbabwe, and some spooky shit might be happening. So let's, without further ado, dive in. The boat jolts abruptly, then begins to roll faster as bigger and higher waves loom over the bow. The fisherman starts to scream in his native language as he struggles to maintain the helm. It would seem something is trying to rip it from his hands. The boat rolls violently. The deck's bridge almost cries and groans in pain as if it were to break at any moment, and then everything ceases. The boat stills suddenly, and the sea once again becomes calm and tranquil. The quiet only lasts for a brief moment. Something is coming out from the water, slowly. You can make out a silhouette hanging over the gunwale, swaying frantically. More dark shadows join the first creeping shape in the night, slithering onto the deck, taking hold of the vessel and starting to wrap tightly around it. They are enormous tentacles, soon to embrace the boat entirely. Once again you hear the sound of wood groaning under the pressure of those horrific appendages. The tentacle reaches inside the boat like a snake, searching for something. That something is you! You jerk awake, screaming at the top of your lungs. Your travel companions stare at you unnerved. "What's up, Jake? Did you have a bad dream?" His tone of voice is mocking. "Leave it, Ed. I think I'd rather have some whiskey to relax now." You stand up and look over the horizon. You hope that some movement, however small, may take away the unsettling sensations from the nightmare that bequeathed you. Over in the distance, you can see the land slowly getting closer. Woo, 4 experience points! And a new journal entry. I'm just gonna look to see where we're at in experience. Oh, we're close! I think my next goal is gonna be speechcraft, up to 3. What's our new note? Helen? I thought I cleared you already. And maybe it didn't save it. And now we're back at Zanzibar. Alright, back to the story. Land at last! Your camp awaits you. The prelude to arriving back home. The tension you've been accumulating begins to subside. Then, as you come nearer the shore, you can feel a creeping sensation. You cannot see the distinctive profile of Stone Town. The city is nearby, but I have some business to attend here in Bumbwini. It's not a long way from here to Stone Town. Follow the coast southward. You can't go wrong. You leave the fisherman's boat, and the man waves you goodbye with a smile as he makes his way for Bumbwini. His help was invaluable. Without him, you would have wandered the African coast aimlessly before dying of starvation and exposure to the elements. The man demanded nothing of you, and you have no reason to berate him, despite the minor change of course. Yeah, it's not that big a deal. You proceed towards the base, walking almost mechanically. Your legs simply want to reach their destination, while your mind is left to wander. The sun is setting slowly beyond the horizon, but you've not yet arrived. You choose to set up camp for the night, and luckily you find shelter in a seemingly suitable cave. The light from the campfire shines on the rock formation surrounding you, bathing it in shades of orange and red. Before sleep, you eat the remaining food. Tomorrow, you should manage to get to Stonetown easily, and will be able to delight your palates with a decent meal. Lost an item, what? Your head is pounding, and you're exhausted after the long walk. You have the unnerving feeling that the second you close your eyes, there will be more nightmares awaiting you. Part of you doesn't even want to sleep at all. You lie still for a couple minutes before falling asleep. Before we fall asleep, I need to figure out what the fuck it is I just lost. Okay, I still have the concoction. I've got my first aid, my medical equipment, my flask, my magnifying lens, and a revolver. I'm not sure what I lost. And the nightmare is the new entry. Okay. You wake up at the crack of dawn. As you expect, it's been a grueling night, but fortunately, you have no clear memory of what you dreamt. Captain Smith is already on his feet, ready to leave. You resume marching towards Stonetown. If Abbas was right, your destination shouldn't be too far. You hope it proves true, because every minute you spend in these lands will always be a minute too many. What survives the plague? At last, the outline of Stonetown appears in front of your eyes. You are relieved after the enormous weight of this difficult mission. Smith shares your relief, and you both pick up your pace to put this horrible experience behind you as soon as possible. But a few seconds later, you see a young British soldier running towards you frantically. They must have seen you from the watchtower. The soldier speaks with Captain Smith, but you can't make out a single word. A horrified expression, the likes of which you've never seen before, dawns on your captain's face. The two men sprint off towards Stonetown. You feel weak. The trip was trying, both mentally and physically. Your vision is clouded, and you suddenly faint right at the gates of Stonetown. You awaken some hours later in a cot bed near the infirmary. You're surrounded by chaos. Soldiers, doctors, and nurses ceaselessly going to and fro. Something terrible must have happened during your absence. Two men on the stretchers are being carried inside. You stand and follow them. You're confronted with men screaming, convulsing, and others covered in sweat from the burning fevers, sores devastating the patient's skin, blood soaking their sheets stained with bodily fluids. The wailing of the dying and cries of those who have lost their minds to a feverish delirium echo throughout the large, bare room. In the middle of all the confusion, you notice a doctor, who you approach for some kind of explanation. We were hit by a violent epidemic. Fevers, sores, hallucinations. The doctor doesn't wait around, and immediately leaves to take care of new patients. You know very well the symptoms the doctor just described. You look around and notice the bodies lying on the floor. There's nothing to be done for them now. There's absolutely no time to waste. You're a doctor. You too must do your part. You approach one of the patients and start to inspect him. He has an abnormally high temperature. He's babbling meaninglessly, and the beginnings of lesions are visible on his skin, symptoms you've come to be familiar with, the same disease that has stricken East Africa. Act according to your medical knowledge, leaving aside your role as soldier. Try to speak to the man. No, let's do that. You roll up your sleeves and resume your careful examination of the patient, trying to understand how the contagion occurs, develops, and spreads. You can only conjecture that there has been some sort of contact between Zanzibar and the rest of East Africa. Woo, to experience. Probably one or more infected people have left their villages, running from the epidemic, unknowingly carrying it to the island. However, something still eludes you. Certain dynamics of this illness remain incomprehensible to you, alien to everything you've learned through years of medical school and practice. You leave the sickbeds, doing your utmost to ignore the sounds of those screams and moans. You wish you could do something for them, but you'll need to talk to Smith and clarify why he was so upset at the information that soldier carried. Could there be news about the disease itself? As you ponder this new question, you freeze on the spot at the sight of one of the infirmary cots. Smith is at the bedside of his son, Scott. The cold military facade the man has worn all throughout your mission lays shattered in front of the boy's frail body. Smith's pain laid bare for all to see. Scott is convulsing and screaming incomprehensibly. As soon as Smith sees you, he leaves his child's bedside and approaches you impetuously. "Huntington, I'm begging you! Help my son! You must save him!" You hesitate out of surprise, and Smith is almost on his knees in front of you, imploring you to help. I mean, we need this concoction. I can't give it to a person. If we take this concoction and study it, we could make more. Woo, to experience! You immediately set out to lower the child's temperature, and luckily your efforts seem to bear fruit. This surely won't be enough to save him, but at least you've soothed his pain and gained some time, in case you should attempt a different approach later. Oh, this is now my only option. Alright, fine. You kept the concoction Lorraine gave you, but the mixture you have at your disposal is only enough for one dose. You thought you'd keep the strange potion for yourself, in case the symptoms of the illness returned. But you can't leave Smith's child to die. I mean, agreed, but we could also spend our time to make more and then maybe give him later. I don't know how long it takes to make medicine, though. I shouldn't talk. Huntington, are you sure that stuff works? The captain raises an arm as if to stop you, but retreats immediately, fraught with countless unspeakable doubts. We have no choice, Captain. We must try even the impossible. For a moment, Smith stands between you and Scott, almost determined to stop you from feeding the unknown concoction to his son. Then, the child starts screaming louder, his voice twisted in harsh, animalistic sounds. The captain steps aside, lowering his head in pained resignation. You hold the child's head firmly and force him to drink, making sure he swallows it properly. When you've made sure he's had enough, you turn to look at Smith and nod. The man returns to his son's bedside, and you can't do anything but leave the room and wait. Well, it's a good thing we didn't give this concoction to Meyer then, otherwise Smith's son would have died. Hey, life in danger. I didn't see everything that just triggered there, so... First, let's take a look. I've got 34 experience. I'm gonna pop it into Speechcraft. I assume there's some in notes. Scott's fate. Disease spread to Stone Town, affecting several people. Among the victims is Scott, Smith's son, thanks to Lorraine's curative decoction? Okay, fuck it, decoction. Scott seems to be doing better. Good, and of course I got an achievement, life in danger. Sadly, we missed Brother in Arms, but that's fine. Who cares? I'm not here for achievements. I'm here for the story. Some long hours later, Scott seems to be taking the medicine well. His fever is slowly subsiding, and the child's delirium and screams have ceased. His skin begins to regain a more natural color. You smile as you look at him sleeping under his father's watch, Smith caressing his head. At least for now, you can consider him out of the woods. You leave the infirmary. You haven't had a minute of rest before finding yourself yet again in the middle of the storm. You're exhausted. You come across some soldiers carrying a backpack and more exploration equipment. They finally found an expedition that had... Fumble. They finally found an expedition that's been missing for weeks. You move closer to learn more, trying to divert your thoughts away from the disease. Soldiers tell you about a troop which had left about 2 weeks ago in search of water springs inland. During the mission, those soldiers disappeared, never sending any message as to their whereabouts. A recovery team was given the task of finding them, but all they could find were the corpses of the men, in horrifying conditions, all of them. The soldiers stop talking and shiver faintly, then proceed to empty the salvaged backpacks and inspect their contents. Your attention is drawn by a thud of a diary falling on the table. You see it there, surrounded by other trinkets. You approach it, intending to examine it. The cover is inscribed with the name Private Eric McLean. You untie the strings that hold the notebook closed, then open it to start reading. We are at the mercy of the delirious savages. They were running towards us, their eyes bloodshot. We tried to locate an escape route, discovering only too late that we had found ourselves in a horrendous trap. We rapidly flipped through the rest of the diary, jumping back and forth through the pages to find more details. Last night I was plagued by terrible nightmares, creatures only a fevered mind could produce. I believe the visions and dreams are closely linked to the disease itself. In what measure, however, I dare not say, unless I venture hypotheses that fall outside the canons of what we usually call science. Woo! 4 more points. What are you reading, Private? One of the men has approached you with a curious look on his face, his eyes turning to the recovered diary. I mean, I don't see any reason to be a douche about it. You raise your eyes from the diary and address him politely. However, you observe a certain greed in the soldier's eyes, fixed on what you're holding rather than yourself. A diary. Recently recovered from the team, it belonged to one Eric McLean. See, I don't think you should keep this. It contains some important information. The man extends his palm. He expects you to hand him the notebook. This man is a bit too demanding. Well, it's a good thing I just buffed my speechcraft. Well, if it's so important, then it's in the right hands with me. Soldier grits his teeth and leaves. Fuck you, random soldier! After this brief interruption, you're musing that what you have... After this brief interruption, you're musing that what you have just read shares a number of traits with your current situation. Maybe you should continue reading later on, when you're able to concentrate. You slip the diary into your backpack just as another soldier approaches you. The man informs you've been summoned to your commanding officers. Your heart skips a beat, but you try to keep calm and follow the messenger. The Curious History of a Diary. You nervously walk towards command, and you can't help but wonder if perhaps you've been summoned so as to be discharged. The officers await you in a room with rather Spartan furnishings. There's a desk almost exactly in the center, and various African trophies hanging on the walls. Please, Huntington, have a seat. Mr. Huntington, you stood out both during the action and as a medic. As such, we've decided to award you with accommodation and a medal for bravery and skill in battle. Damn! Okay, sure, thank you! You're surprised. You would never have expected this. You warmly thank the officers, but you still venture the request for indefinite leave, making your intentions of resuming your civilian life known. The 3 men stay silent for an instant, then begin exchanging opinions. This is your request. We feel bound to honor it. We'll organize it so you can leave for London today, with a place in an officer's cabin. We have hope that someday you'll choose to offer your service once again for the British Army. Woohoo! Medal of Valor! You take your leave and return to the barracks to pack for your impending departure. You glance at your comrades' cots, both of the men you left behind, and those you have to leave now. You close your fist around your backpack strap and take a deep breath. It's time to go back to London. You say goodbye to Ed with a hug. The Irishman won't stop singing or slapping you on the back. He's not drunk, but he behaves as if he were. His eyes are wet with the emotion of the moment. It's gonna stitch up my guts now that you're leaving, huh, Doc? Don't be silly, O'Bannon. You're not a child anymore. You're perfectly capable of looking after yourself, when you're not overflowing with booze. The young soldier laughs, then offers one of his faithful whiskey bottles, with a wide grin on his face. This is the last one. Last one? Seriously? You're surprised. The Irishman nods again, then sits next to you on top of the crate. Top of the crate filled with provisions. A toast to the Italian! I'll sing about him and his food when I'm back home. You take a big gulp, hoping Ed, too, will be able to return home soon. Although the army generally reduces the appearance of age differences, you know that he's still just a boy. You make your way towards the harbor, trying to set aside your worries for him. Your mind flies to London, your hometown you will soon see again. You're climbing on board when you see Smith on the deck. You meet his eyes, and the captain smiles back at you. He's holding Scott's hand, and the boy looking visibly better. He's probably still feverish, with his watery eyes and flushed cheeks, but the bleeding has stopped fully, and the sores on his neck have almost completely disappeared. You guess Smith has been calling back to London, unlike the rest of the detail. A young soldier is tasked with carrying your luggage into the officer's cabin you were given. You choose to spend the time before the departure on the ship deck to look at Stonetown one last time. You watch the sailors loading the last provisions, the vessel now ready to leave. At last, the ship is unmoored and sets sail. The siren announcing its departure pierces your eardrums, and the light motion of the sea greets you once again. There's a long journey ahead of you, and you're going to use that time to collect your thoughts and try to rest after the whirlwind you've just experienced. You head for your cabin in the officer's deck. It's a spacious room, with a bed that looks extremely soft, a desk refined with wooden furnishings, and supplied with the essentials for writing letters or keeping a journal. As you put away your belongings, your gaze falls on Eric McLean's diary. In a pocket of your backpack, the journey could be a good time to read his journal. You look at it for a couple moments, but then your stomach starts rumbling. You feel hungry, and you need to eat something. Although, you could take a look at McLean's diary first. Let's see, it would be good to read now, but you might not be able to focus on an empty stomach. Plus, come on. It's not like it's going anywhere. I'm the only one that knows I have this fucking journal on here. Unless somebody snuck on here. You place the diary in a drawer and leave your cabin for the mess hall. You sit next to some officers. Smith is in front of you. As you arrive, the captain stands and approaches you, loudly singing your praises to the other men, slapping you on the back and extolling the cool-headedness you showed in the most critical moments. You smile, although you feel slightly embarrassed when the table erupts into applause. In spite of the joyous moment, you can't shake the strange feeling that you're being watched. You turn around, but there are too many people and too much noise in the room. You blame your paranoia and force yourself to go back to the celebration. After all, your experience on the field has definitely worn you out. You probably just need to relax. When the meal is over, you stand and leave the mess hall, but soon afterwards you get a piercing migraine. I think I'm going to go to the cabin. You lie on the bed, and in a few seconds you're in a deep sleep. When you open your eyes, it's night. The ship is in turmoil. There's a rough, stormy sea. A rumbling thunder suddenly booms through your cabin. You hear a faint rustling on the other side of the door, as if someone were trying to enter your cabin. You lie in wait, close to the door, listening. Whoever's on the other side has given up their plan of coming in. Maybe it was just a drunk sailor who got the wrong cabin. You choose to go back to sleep. The night goes on peacefully. The storm which tore the sky apart seems to have settled, and you manage to sleep a little. One more week to the dock of Suez. Suez? I'm gonna assume Suez. Suez. Fuck it, I'm going with Suez. More than enough time to study Eric's diary. Eric McLean's mission was certainly nightmarish. His description matches your own observations of the situation. A Zanzibar that's controlled only superficially by the British. The pages are filled with his encounters with wild, beast-like men, and other strange goings-on. It's quite unsettling how you managed to find so many similarities between people. McLean, for example, describes a scout, someone called Lloyd. who reminds you of your friend Orion. Both possess similar traits: determined, wise, with a cold-blooded attitude. Both your journeys seem to have traveled the same strange, disturbing path. Eric's arrival to Zanzibar was also upsetting and alienating, as if someone had meticulously arranged everything like the writer of a performance preparing for the encore. You close the diary, caught up in sudden anguish. The memories of Africa are still too fresh, and you don't want to relive those moments just yet. You decide to stop reading and continue once you arrive in London. You're admiring the Eritrean shore from the deck of the ship, and you have just passed the Aden Gulf, and now you are heading toward the Red Sea. The clear sky lets you enjoy the wonderful landscape all around your vessel. The sandy earth that blurs the heat of the sun, and the vegetation warped by the reflecting mirages. You look at these natural wonders for some hours before returning to your cabin. The time goes by pleasantly while your ship gets closer to the Suez. You are enjoying some well-deserved rest in your bunk when someone knocks on the door. You can't help but wonder who it could be, and when you open the door, you are surprised. Captain Smith is in front of you with his usual military frown, and who appears to be relieved to be heading to London. Some locks of hair and watchful eyes appear behind the legs of your superior. It's Scott, who looks much better, and you smile at him. The child hides behind his father when he notices you're watching. Huntington, I thought I'd take advantage of these days to talk. We have a lot to discuss, and it's been hard, but we'll finally be heading home. Of course, Captain. Scott sprints along the corridor, disappearing behind the corner, to avoid the embarrassment of waving, which makes you smile. When Smith walks away, you close the door. Finally, the ship docks at the harbor of the Suez to gather supplies for the last part of the journey to London. The quays are filled with people doing all kinds of things: workers carrying huge crates, people preparing to set sail with their fishing boats, drunks already stumbling around in broad daylight. The streets of the town seem to hug the shore, as if they are trying to engulf it in a tangled maze made of alleys and secondary streets. You decide that before meeting with Smith, you will allow yourself some free time to forgetting to be Jake Huntington, to be just a simple tourist. At the sunset of Suez. Suez is an incredible sight. The canal glimmering in the sunlight as if it were beset with precious stones and shores crowded with boats of every possible kind. Flying all sorts of flags, despite being a British protectorate, the city seems to glory in its cosmopolitan nature, deserving its fame as the crossroads of the Western world. Your senses are struck by the smells and colors of the bazaar, floating around all the stands covered in goods you've never before seen. You become a willing captive of Suez's charm and uniqueness. You walk the crowded streets and enjoy the lively, cheerful atmosphere of the city's twisting alleyways. You eat the meal you've purchased, a kind of local sandwich whose name you can't really remember. You find it tasty, although a bit too spicy. You savor the simplest details, the carefree children running from house to house, the street vendors loudly extolling their goods, the bizarrely shaped antiques whose prices make you doubt their authenticity. You spend the remainder of the day resting in your cabin, and when you look out to the docks again, the sunset is already painting the famous canal gold. Raising your eyes to the pier, you observe how it's now completely free of the afternoon's hustle and bustle, an almost romantic sight. Captain Smith is waiting for you. He's lighting a match for his pipe, and the sky's soft orange shades glow together before you. It's an incredible sight, don't you think, Huntington? He greets you thus, with a question floating in the middle of that painting-worthy landscape. His voice incredibly low, calm and steady. I wouldn't know, Captain. I'm really starting to miss London. The military man turns to you with a frown, as if you spoiled the moment for him. He then blows smoke from his pipe and gestures at you to follow him. Smith takes you out drinking to a port tavern. For a moment, you're bewildered. It's just like entering the typical English pub. The atmosphere is the same that you've breathed time and again in London. The changes your country has brought upon these lands are indeed staggering. You sit at a secluded table and order 2 beers. Huntington, I think you know why I brought you here. You're not sure. The captain is an unfathomable man, and you don't know what he wants to tell you. Scott, is it because your son? Is this about the disease? I don't know. Home. I think it's the disease. To hell with the disease! Captain spits on the ground in irritation. My son, Scott, he's only alive thanks to you. My wife died during childbirth, and he's everything I have. Scott has come with me everywhere I was assigned, but recent events have made me think. That was going to be my second guess, honestly. It's either the disease or his son. Smith takes a long gulp of his beer. You dare not interrupt him. I've decided to leave the army. The news leaves you speechless. Smith looks exactly like the kind of person who was born for military life. My son's life and future are too important. I cannot endanger him again. I must be able to offer him a normal life. No, yeah, I'll agree. I agree with you, Captain. Smith smiles at you and takes a large gulp from his mug. I mean, yeah, bringing your child into a battlefield, probably not the best move. Just throwing that out there. But also, bringing your child into a battlefield where there is also a lot of disease, probably an even worse move. Smith pays for the both of you, then stands and leaves the tavern, and its familiar London atmosphere. You take a few steps, and as soon as you're far enough away, Smith turns to you. His gaze is stern as usual, but his eyes, you can see so much more. There's the enormous gratitude he feels for you, a kind of bond that will never be broken. Take this, Jake. It's my London address. Keep it carefully, please. Should you ever need help, you only need ask. I'm indebted to you. Smith certainly doesn't seem like the kind of man to make empty promises, and the stress he puts on the words, I am indebted to you, suggests he will help you no matter what your problem is. With no questions asked, you slip his address inside your pocket, and together you walk back to the ship. The longest leg of the journey is still ahead. Hey, in time of need! Homecoming. But with that, I think we're going to end this episode here. In the next one, we're completing our last leg of the journey home. See you guys then.